Investing in rental properties has been quite popular for many years, not surprisingly. However, what is surprising is the uptick in investors that I've been assisting lately. And look, this may be anecdotal, but it just seems that many people are looking to get their hands on some rental real estate and start stacking cash flow now more than ever before. However, there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to buying rental properties, so many that I felt compelled to make this video to offer my opinion on the common mistakes that new investors and even seasoned investors make. I want to clarify some myths, many that you've probably been led to believe for many years, by friends and family members telling you how to buy rental real estate, but don't actually own any real estate themselves. You know those people. Anyways, this video aims to provide you with more context into the world of rental real estate investing, more specifically Miami and South Florida markets, which is an important distinction as real estate is hyper-local to your market. However, most of what I'm going to talk about today are solid rules to live by, but understand that they come from my lens as an investor in my home market. So just take that into consideration. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 misconceptions and myths that most investors or would-be investors get wrong. And what are those? Those are 1, why condos and single family homes are terrible rental investments. 2, cash flow does not make you wealthy and investing just for cash flow is probably a bad idea. And number 3, why most people don't really understand how return on investment properties actually work, and by how failing to do so, you may be overlooking some potentially great investments. All right, let's start with the first of the 3, shall we? Which is probably my most controversial opinion and flat out rules that I live by. And that is that condos and single family homes are not the best rental investments. And in many cases, just terrible rental investments, if I'm being honest. There, I said it. Extrapolating even further, I usually advise my clients against them. Now, of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. I feel like I say that in every video because investing is not binary. It's not black or white. But for the majority, I would stay clear from single family homes and condos. Also townhomes as well when it comes to rental real estate. The simple answer is that these types of properties were not developed to work as a rental investment. They were originally intended to be an end user product, meaning you're buying the property to live in the property. Most investors who rent these type of properties are what I tend to call accidental landlords. Either they inherited the property or they bought the property to live in it for a while and then moved elsewhere and then decided to rent their own property. The point is that most savvy investors do not purchase this type of real estate because there are better options for your money. There are many reasons why I would recommend against not buying this type of product, but let's just talk about a few. For one is the property is either 100% occupied or 100% vacant. There is no in between. It's either rented or it's not. And as an investor, when it's rented, it's blissful. Everything is working perfectly. Rent is being paid. Property has no issues. Amazing. However, it's when your tenant moves out that you notice its biggest flaw and weakness. And you only find this out when you're scrambling to find a tenant to fill in that vacancy, because vacancy is one of the biggest expenses that most landlords and investors are going to have. And it's what we consider a phantom cost. Most investors, surprisingly, don't factor vacancy in, but just 1 month of having your property vacant can wreak havoc on your overall return for the year. Not to mention, it's all you think about. Your pressure to rent the property to stop the bleeding, so it takes your attention away from work, family, and you lose out on other opportunities. But that pressure also leads to you making mistakes, increasing your risk of selecting a bad tenant because you're rushing to get it rented. And what this means is you're going to have problems in the future, turning what is supposed to be an investment into a liability. No bueno. Another reason I advise against these type of properties as investments are because most of them have HOAs. And no matter what anyone tells you, an HOA is not an investor's friend. You wait for them to tell you if your tenant meets their requirements to rent your property on their timeline. Just stop for a second and think of how insane that statement is. You want to rent your property to a qualified tenant and you want to get them into your property in just a few days? Well, the HOA will likely not be able to accommodate. Additionally, investments to invest money back into the property or the community, otherwise known as special assessments, are voted on by the board, and the board mainly comprises of residents who live in the building or community. Shocker. So their decision-making process to spend money is what's going to be best for their quality of life, not what's going to be best for your investment. The board votes that they prefer to have the condo building painted blue as it promotes a more calming feeling to the residents who live there. Then there goes your cash flow. This is a bit extreme, but you get the point. Your interests are not always going to be aligned for the betterment of your investment. So what do you purchase instead? Well, to me, by far, the best type of real estate that you can buy when it comes to rental properties is a multifamily building. Let's just start with the fact that they solve these 2 main issues that I just spoke about, which I consider to be major factors to any investor. Take, for example, the 100% vacant, 100% 100% occupied. If you buy a multifamily property, which just means that it's more than one dwelling unit inside of a structure, you will effectively be able to mitigate your vacancy. Even if you buy a duplex, which is 2 units, provides you the ability to have 1 unit rented while you rent the other, thus allowing you to have the ability to have 50% vacant using the rent of the other unit to cover the expenses. The more units the property has, the more protection and insulation it's going to offer. The economies of scale, in other words, work in your favor. You also don't need to deal with HOAs. When you buy a multifamily property, you are the HOA. As I like to say, you are the mayor of your little building. You decide what capital expenditures you want to implement into your building. You get to direct the funds towards the repairs and improvements that matter to you. And just as important, you have control of the application and screening process of your tenants, allowing you to rent your property to who you want, when you want, on your own terms. You're not stuck waiting for the board to meet on the second Tuesday of every month to make sure that they sign the approval letter so that your tenant can move in. You don't have to do that. I can talk about why multifamily properties are far superior than single family homes and condos and even townhomes, but we could be here forever. But I think I've made my point. I do want to add, however, that although this is true in many cases with pretty much everything, there are always exceptions, like I've mentioned before. I personally have some clients where we manage their single family homes, townhomes, and condo rentals, and they're phenomenal rentals, usually because they paid off the property years ago or they bought it at a very low price, or even if it's new construction, they got for a steal because now the repairs are going to be a fraction of the cost. They are probably better investments or an asset than some multifamily properties you can find in today's market. But nevertheless, the fact remains that these are exceptions and not the rule. I've had far more clients, for example, that come to me with properties that they lose money on every single month due to maintenance increases, special assessments, and slow processing times for new residents from the HOA. All because someone told them to buy this property as it was a good investment to buy in a particular area because of something called appreciation, which, quick aside, I know some investors that buy just for appreciation, meaning they buy a property knowing they're going to lose money on the property each and every single month. And they're okay with that because the appreciation is going to more than make up for any of the carrying costs they're going to spend. And look, while I have seen this strategy work for some of my clients buying just for appreciation and they have made a fortune, it's simply just a game that's too risky for me. But one thing is buying knowing you're going to cash flow, and another thing is buying thinking you are and then realizing that it actually doesn't cash flow. Hey, quick thing. If you're finding value from this content and have faith that I'm going to deliver even more value in the next 2 misconceptions, do me a favor and click that thumbs up button. And if you're bold enough, click that subscribe button and notification bell. All right, back to the video and to point number 2. And that is that the cash flow does not make you wealthy, and buying just for cash flow is a bad idea. Now, this may sound like I just contradicted myself because of the whole buying just for appreciation rant I just went on, but I assure you I did not. Stay with me for a second. Just like buying solely for appreciation to me is a bad idea, buying just for cash flow is also a bad idea. Personally, I believe you need a combination of the two. Cash flow won't make you wealthy in the sense that it's going to take a ton of rental properties before you can replace your earned income or job. And that's more time than most people are willing to wait before they're financially free. What cash flow does give you is oxygen. Oxygen to be able to wait and hold on to a property for the long term, long enough for the property to do its appreciation thing, which is to exponentially grow the value of your property. And that, my friends, means that appreciation is actually what makes you wealthy, not cash flow. But you do need both. Historically speaking, property values have gone up every single decade. So it's not a question of if your rental property will be worth more in the future. It's more of a question of can you hold onto your property while you wait for it to be worth more. And this is where most people get into trouble. I see the market as a game of musical chairs. Everyone's loving life, doing well when, interest rates are low, appreciation and rent are all-time highs. They're loving life. But what happens when the music stops? The market softens, supply increases, and values drop. Well, if you bought just for appreciation, like I mentioned earlier, and this was your only strategy, where now you're sitting on a ton of real estate that you can't or no longer want to foot the bill on a monthly basis, thus forcing you to sell at a loss. But if you bought smart, you will cash flow even if the property values have dropped. Why? Because rents tend to stabilize and in some markets increase when people can't buy homes. It's common sense. If people can't afford to buy a home, those buyers don't just disappear. They simply become renters. So your property value may drop, but you're cash flowing from the rent, then you don't care because all you know that you have to do is to weather the storm and wait for the market to get better. So you keep renting your property, collect the cash flow, and wait for the market to correct itself and go back to increasing, which may take anywhere from a few months to several years. But the cash flow pays you to be patient. In the end, you want to be able to sell on your own terms. Conversely, thinking that wealth is built on solely cash flow is wrong. It's a tool for you to use later on so you can tap into that equity that your properties have built in the waiting process. In other words, cash flow may make you rich, but appreciation will make you wealthy. You need to optimize for both. The cash flow topic is something that ties into point number 3, which is that most people don't understand how to accurately calculate a return on investment. The main reason is because investors like to look at cash on cash return as your primary factor, which in layman terms just means the return you are getting in comparison to the money that you have tied or invested into the property. Basically, your return on investment. As I said, cash flow tends to be the main indicator on this. An 8% return on investment, for example, is a great return in today's market, such in real estate or in many other investments for that matter. Whenever you hear someone saying that they have an 8% return, what they're most likely referring to is the cash flow after all expenses have been paid is 8% of what they have invested in the property. And while that is true, you have to consider other factors. For one is appreciation. In Florida, generally you could expect a 3 to 5% increase in property value. The amount varies from market to market, neighborhood to neighborhood, obviously, but 3 to 5% is a good number to use. Another item to consider is your mortgage paydown. Each year you collect rent and service your debt, the payoff of your loan is going down. In an ideal scenario, the payoff goes down each year and the property value goes up each year, creating a gap of what you owe and how much the property is worth. This gap will only get bigger and bigger as time goes on. Depreciation is another benefit that contributes to your overall return. If you're able to qualify as a real estate professional when you do your taxes, then you may be able to take advantage of something called bonus depreciation. And look, I'm not an accountant, obviously, so speak to your accountant on this matter to see if it would relate to you. But bonus depreciation, if you can use it, will have a massive impact on your tax liability, thus saving you a ton of money. What I'm getting at is there are many factors, as you can see, when buying real estate, all which need to be considered collectively because they work in unison to give you a far more greater impact and return than just cash on cash return. Now, did I lose you? Because I know that this can sound very complicated, especially if it's the first time you've ever heard it, but I promise you it's actually very simple. But look, I like to give this example of how doubling your investment actually works to showcase some blind spots that investors may have. Now, I'm going to keep this example very simple and very basic to not lose any of you to ultimately illustrate my point. Let's assume you purchase a duplex for $500,000 at a 25% down payment. Simple math will show us that 25% of 500 is $125,000. Now, we're not going to calculate for closing costs or rehab costs in this example. As I said, we're keeping it simple. So 125 is what we have tied up into that property. Okay, now when I ask most investors how much the property needs to go up in value in order to double their investment, they will likely say $1 million because doubling 500K of what the property is worth is $1 million. But that's not the correct answer. Notice I said doubling of your investment and not doubling your investment property's value. Essentially, what we're talking about here is just the money that you have tied up into the property, meaning the $125,000, which was a 25% of the $500,000 that you purchased the property for. So in order to double your investment of $125,000, we need to make another $125,000. I know, groundbreaking math, but this is the power of where appreciation will come in. If we just count for appreciation as the main driver for doubling your investment, and we use a 5% annual appreciation on a property worth $500,000, that means that each year the property is going to make us $25,000 in appreciation. I'm not even going to go into how this is actually more than $25,000 a year as it compounds from the previous year's gains. Like again, I said, we're taking it very simple and very basic. So we're going to use $25,000 a year as our marker. So how many years to double your investment? Well, if we're making $25,000 a year in appreciation and we only have $125,000 invested in the property, it will only take us 5 years to double our investment in the form of equity. I can already hear the comments on how this is actually not entirely accurate because we're not accounting for the cost of selling the property and commission and closing costs. Okay, fine. Look, to not get super nuanced, just add another 2 years to that for a total of 7 years, and you will basically be able to double your investment after your expenses. The point that I'm trying to make in this very simple example is that it takes far less time than you think to double your investment. In this case, it's only 7 years or 5 years, whatever you want to use, 5 or 7 years to double your investment in the form of appreciation. And when you factor the other drivers that I was talking about, like appreciation, low pay down, and the tax benefits, you realize that you're getting a much bigger overall return that you're getting than just your initial return on investment. There are a ton more myths and misconceptions, but this video and list I feel gets us off to a good start. But if you'd like to see a part 2, then let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you have any questions and you want to reach me, my email is found in the description box below. And as always, if you found value from the content, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to stay up to date with more real estate content like this in the Miami market. And with that said, guys, I will see you all next week. God bless.